In honor of Jewish American Heritage Month, Old Town San Diego State Historic Park has made 3 videos celebrating the Jewish community in the San Diego region. Our first installment explores the significance of Louis Rose to Old Town San Diego. Please enjoy as historian Donald Harrison describes Rose's time in Old Town.
Hi, we're standing in front of the Robinson Rose House at Old Town San Diego State Historic Park. And it's called Robinson Rose House after 2 of its most famous occupants, James W. Robinson, who was a former acting governor of Texas prior to the time of statehood, and Louis Rose, a German businessman who immigrated here in 1850 from the same wagon train that James W. Robinson also came here on. And the 2 of them on that wagon train became the best of friends. And later they were partners both in government and in business ventures. A little bit about James Robinson. When he was the acting governor, it was when Texas was still considering itself part of Mexico, but pretty upset about the way that it was being treated under General Santa Anna. And he was elected lieutenant governor by the provisional government. And then because of a dispute between the governor and the legislature impeached the governor and made him as lieutenant governor the new acting governor. Meanwhile, the governor, whose name was Smith, decided to get rid of the Texas legislature. And so there was a big question in Texas at the time of who was in charge, which was probably one of the reasons that no one really came to the defense of the Alamo, which was about the same time, and left those poor defenders on their own. So Robinson came to San Diego to make a new start. And Rose came here a different route. He immigrated to the United States in 1840, arriving in New Orleans. And from New Orleans, he made his way to San Antonio. And in San Antonio, he made some money. And eventually he came here in 1850. The same year that California became the 31st state of the Union, and the same year that San Diego became a chartered city. He arrived here with something that most people didn't have. He had money. He had about $6,000, which in those days was an awful lot. And he deposited it with the city for use to purchase land eventually. They probably would have stayed in the businesses they originally got into. Robinson was an attorney. And Louis Rose opened up a hotel and saloon not too far from here. But then something happened in San Diego that changed their lives and perhaps the life of San Diego. It was a great big controversy over the jail. You see, the brand new Common Council decided that of all things it needed, it was a new jail. And the jail, in order to have it built, they asked for bids. And 3 bids were submitted. But somehow they decided to throw out the low bid, and of course they threw out the high bid. And lo and behold, the middle bid was submitted by the sheriff, whose name was Agustin Harashi. And the Common Council, which included one of the council members was Harashi's father, they decided to give him the contract. And he built the jail, and it became known as the Swiss cheese jail of San Diego. Because it had so many holes in it, anybody could get out of it. In fact, the story is told that one of its first customers, if you would call them that, was a young member of the mayor's family. The mayor was Joshua Bean, and the young member was Roy Bean, who later became known in Texas as the law west of the Pecos, so a very colorful character. And he was something of a hellion as a kid, and he got into trouble and a scrape, and they put him in the jail. And he got out by digging his way out with a spoon. And the council said, geez, if he can dig his way out like that, it's not a pretty good jail. So maybe we ought to ask the sheriff to rebuild it or make good. But the sheriff said it's not his fault. They didn't have the right kind of cementing type limestone. But if the council would only pay some more money, he could buy the proper stuff and make that jail fit. So the council agreed. Instead of asking him to do it on his own, they said, yeah, we'll give you more money. But they didn't have any money. The city was broke. And so instead of paying them cash, they issued what they called $100 bonds. And people bought for $100 a bond, at which they were paid 8% interest. Can you imagine getting 8% interest today? But they got 8% interest. And it wasn't a year, it was 8% interest a month. So you can imagine that the amount of money that the city owed to the bondholders kept aggregating. It got bigger and bigger and bigger until there was really nothing left to do but to declare bankruptcy. And so the state legislature revoked San Diego City Charter and decided that a new board of trustees that would be responsible to the legislature should be appointed. The board of trustees, the first board that was elected, the 3-member board, after a while just threw up their hands and said, we don't know how to pay off this debt. We resign. So there was another election, and to the second board of trustees, both Robinson and Rose were elected. And they immediately decided to declare that they would not pay the interest on those bonds. Well, of course, the bondholders were very upset. They said, hey, we bought those bonds in good faith. We should be getting our 8% interest. And before the matter would actually be resolved at trial, they had an out-of-court settlement. And the out-of-court settlement was that they would pay 4% interest, which still was an awful lot. Take a look at what interest you're getting today. And remember, that was a month. And one of the problems was that 8%, 4% didn't matter. They didn't have any money to pay it. So what should they do? Well, the city did have one very, very big asset. It owned all the land around. And so they decided to have a public auction right here in Old Town Plaza in the square. And if we wheel around, you can see what the plaza looks like. And most of the people, since they lived in Old Town, they bid on lots that were nearby their own homes or just a little bit out of town. But Robinson and Rose had a different idea. They decided that they would buy land along the bay shore between Old Town and the opening of the bay. And their idea is that someday San Diego might grow into a big city, and it would need to have a big port, and that shipping would come to, and a railroad could meet those ships, and San Diego would become a major entrepot of goods coming both from Latin America and from Asia that could then be transshipped across the country. Well, it was a very good dream, and Rose believed it throughout his entire life. In fact, his saying was, "Ve to Isle and you'll see." And whenever someone would ask, is it really going to happen? That's what he would say, "Ve to Isle and you'll see." And he had this faith in San Diego. So they bought that land, which Rose later developed into Roseville after he purchased from Robinson's widow, Sarah, James Robinson's land. He then developed Roseville, which today is part of Point Loma. Additionally, Rose bid for land at a little bit to the north of here in an area that was called La Cañada de las Huegas, which means in Spanish, the Canyon of the Mares. And there he built the San Diego's first tannery. The ironic thing was that San Diego was well known for many, many years for its hides. In fact, ranchers would dump hides at Ballast Point at the opening of the bay, and ships would come in and pick them up and so forth. And hides were known as the California dollar back in the time of, say, 1835, when Richard Henry Dana sailed through and later wrote a book about 2 years before the mast. But they never had a tannery, so even though they had all these hides, if they wanted shoes or belts or saddles, they had to get them from somewhere else. And Rose realized that if he could tan those hides and make these goods, he could eliminate lots of expense of shipping and everything else, sell it to the people here in San Diego, and still make a tidy profit. So originally, that area became known as Rose's Ranch, and later as Rose's Canyon. And today it's known as Rose Canyon. And so it's not named after flowers, it's actually named after Louis Rose. So Roseville is named for him, as is Rose Canyon. Now, while they were trustees, in addition to paying off the debts, they also were automatic members of the County Board of Supervisors. And among things that Robinson and Rose did was to lay out some of the major routes, following often Indian trails that had been created by the Kumeyaay Indians, who are the indigenous people here. And for example, the Interstate 5 and the Interstate 15 roughly follow some of those trails that they laid out, as well as the Interstate 8. So, as you can see, Rose was a very, very important person in San Diego history.